Good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome you to our afternoon session. We have two great guests to talk to us a little bit about the Semantic Web and Wikidata. I'm excited to hear both of these presentations today. Just as a reminder, a couple of quick reminders. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed, and there will be a copy of it available on YouTube following the meeting if you want to see it again or share it. Also, if you have any questions or comments for our speakers, you will need to put them in the chat, and I will be looking for those periodically. Our speakers have indicated that they are open to having questions peppered throughout. So whenever you have a question, feel free to put that in the chat or in the Q&A, and I can respond to those. So I'd like to welcome and introduce our speakers. Sorry about that. That's what happened when the phone is sitting right next to me. Our two speakers, our first one will be Magnus. Let me get out of full screen so I don't lose my notes here. Okay. Our first speaker is, and I'm going to say his name, it's in Swedish, and I'm going to have a problem with it, Magnus Sälgö. He is speaking on Rune inscriptions and persistent identifiers in Wikidata. Magnus is a practitioner of Wikidata, and since 2016, he has completed over 1 million edits, which I find incredibly impressive. He has also worked with Europeania and other cultural heritage projects working on connecting those into Wikidata. And I'm excited to hear from him. And then our second presenter, I'm going to go ahead and introduce him, is Eero Hyvönen. And he will be presenting on digital humanities, the Sampo model and portal series on the Semantic Web. Eero is a professor of semantic media technology in the Department of Computer Science and the director of the Helsinki Center for Digital Humanities at the University of Helsinki. Since 2001, he has been working on national level semantic web infrastructure in Finland and its application in digital humanities. So I'm going to turn it over to Magnus first for his presentation. Magnus, take it away.
Thank you. So as said, I have been doing too much Wikidata my last 4 or 5 years. And I stopped working in 2012. I will speak a little bit about that. And then did some genealogy at another wiki site called WikiTree. And then I realized that Wikidata was there, and I got maybe not in love, but obsessed, if that is good English. Sorry for my Swedish English, but and don't hesitate to stop me and ask questions. So I've been listening to these LD4 sessions now, and I'm so happy to hear that we have a community who are so engaged, who are speaking about properties in a way which I never thought should be seen. Because linked data, as I normally say, needs linked people. And linking people is not easy. In the background I have, where I was a Scrum Master, meaning that we had a meeting every morning speaking about problems we have, what we will do the next day. We don't see that in the Wikidata world. If people are enthusiastic, they are very enthusiastic, and you get nearly a war zone. But it can also be that you would like to speak to someone and they just disappear. So it's an odd community, Wikidata. And I will speak about the case here with Runestones, but also I think I will share my experience with this community, because I listen to some of you who are domain experts, is that maybe you should have some distance to the Wikidata people in a positive way. I do a lot of ice skating in Sweden, and when someone falls through the ice, you don't put your hand out there because they can draw you down in the water. So you give them a stick, which you can release. And I think that's a good metaphor for that. You should have some distance to the Wikidata community. and you are the authority, and we should trust you. So don't forget that. What I will speak about here, you have a picture, and I think this picture is rather interesting. It's a female artists who are not allowed to be in the normal classes. So they have a female group. And what I see in Sweden now is that we have a very good dictionary, female dictionary, and they start document most of those people. And they do it with unique identifiers. So that's excellent, but they don't document the school they are part of. That's just a text string. And I think one of my lesson learned is how important it is to have identifier. And the cool thing with this presentation is that we have identifier from 1750, because I will come back to that, because people at that time thought it was important to have identifier. Lesson learned I have from connecting Wikidata with Europeana is that today art pieces are moved on to Europeana and we don't have identifiers, and the result is not as good as it could be. But I will go into my user case here. So what you see here is a book from 1750, and people who know Sweden better than me maybe understand that Runestones is some holy things in Sweden. It should prove that we are the middle of the universe or something like that. So the best people were working with Runestones in the 1750. So what they did, which was really cool, is that you have one runestone here, another one there, and they added identifiers. So the book is called Bautil, and in Bautil they have done paintings of 1,500 runestones. So it's called 1102, 1095, and then we have another one here. So what's happened then is that we could easily identify them, and they are stable and persistent. At least they have been persistent now for 270 years. What happened now is that in 1940, people start producing a book like this, and they did a new numbering schema. And this book is called SM for Småland, as a part of Sweden, and then you have number 44. But what they have done is that they also added the reference back to 1012, the Bautil book. And I think this is what we need to do. We need to have identifier for as much as possible. The sad thing here is I am, as a volunteer in Wikidata, I have called and spoken with the people producing those books to the left, and they are not into linked data yet. The good thing is that this book is scanned and we can identify each page. So I have a handle, so I can say that this runestone in Wikidata is described on page number something. And that means that we can start doing linked data, we can start connect things. And when we upload pieces like this to the right, the picture, we can, with this new Wikicommons, say that this picture is same as Wikidata, or it depicts what we have in Wikidata. So you get something called semantic interoperability, that this system for storing the pictures can explain for Wikidata that we see the same object. And that's the rub, or the most important things. The next step, which is nearly crazy, is that when runestones are maintained, we normally produce a sign next to it with this number. So that means that I, as a person taking a picture, I can nearly be 100% sure that I take the picture of the correct stone. And that means, because crowdsourcing is something I think a lot of people think is the solution, but do we trust people doing crowdsourcing? one way they have done here is that we have this unique, to the right, the unique sign with this unique number, this unique identifier that we can easily connect down to this book from 1750. Another way of doing things like this is a application called iNaturalist, where people are taking pictures of birds, flowers, and so on. And then you have some voting system in iNaturalist. And if 3-4 people say this is this bird, then you get a higher trust level, which I also think is a good pattern for doing crowdsourcing. So Wikidata checks, people in Wikidata checks normally if we miss some picture, and if the picture in iNaturalist is a free license, we copy it over to Wikidata. And I think last presentation I heard we missed 50,000 pictures of flowers and so on. So it's a good working infrastructure. So here you can see the stone, how it looks today and how it looks in the book. And I guess it's the same stone. So what I did, I had problem communicate with this Swedish literature bank where the book was. They are not into linked data yet, but they will scan all the Swedish literature from the 1900th century. So they are doing a lot of work. But what they had, as I said in the beginning, was that I could say that this book, Smålands Rune inscriptions, that was abbreviated SM, on page 136, we have described this runestone. And we could do the same with another book here, which is in English. And by doing that, I could easily connect all the runestones to the books they had describing it, and also to the page. So that means that when we had picture, we could say that the picture is same as the Wikidata item, and the Wikidata item is the same as in this literature bank. And we have also another place called RAE, which is the authority for runestones, where people are doing runestones research. So we have also their number. And by doing this and doing SPARQL Federation, we have the possibility to do data round tripping. But then we need to communicate, and that's the problem, I think, with linked data, that I'm impressed of the Wikidata community, where you have version management and so on. And my personal thought is that the reason we have all this possibility to see different versions and compare is because the craziness of Wikidata. Because you have people who have good intentions, but not always do right. And then you need to have the possibility to check what they have done and roll back. You need to talk to them, you need to ping them, you need to subscribe on your items and so on. And when I connect things, I don't see that in most platforms. I will come back to that. But here we have a possibility to do data round tripping. So this is the 1940 identification, which we have in the property in Wikidata. This is the picture's unique ID, which is in Wikibase in Wikicommons. Here we have the Wikidata. Here we have the authority, RAE, what ID they have. They have started creating new ID. And what we also have here is that we have uploaded a lot of pictures from runestones to Wikicommons. Now we have put that information down into the metadata. So that means that they can, with one click, get 8,000 pictures and see what picture they already have. Using this ID, they can see what stone we speak about or think we speak about and so on. So this new Wikicommons with Wikibase makes a lot of new possibilities. I have presented this for them, but I have seen no reaction yet. But and so we have the technology is there, but do they trust us or not, and so on. We will see what's happening. They are not fast moving. I think when they do move, they have thought about it for a while. Another thing we can do with SPARQL Federation is that we can get the location from Wikidata. So if we have the picture, we can say that this stone is available at this location. So what you see here is Sweden, part of Sweden. And here you can see in what book this stone is available. So then you can select the book and just see one book and also where the stones are, or you can also do spatial, I think you call it, search. So you can say, give me the stones from this book, which is nearest my current position and so on. So everything open up enormous. And but the problem here is getting this dialogue starting with the literature bank people. And I think that's the big challenge we will see with linked data, that we need to find people who are willing to speak to each other and understand each other also. So this is SPARQL Federation, and on the map, and here you have the URL for doing it. So a little bit about me. I have my background is applied physics. I have a master in it from 1985. And in 2009, I started to work as a consultant on one of the biggest banks as a Scrum Master with international transactions. The cool thing with that is it's the same, that you move metadata from one place to the next, and the metadata is cache. And the cool thing with that is that you have metadata about the currency, you have the amount, and you have who will receive it. And what I think it's like, what you say, being in the church now on LD4, because I'm so impressed what I have seen is that everyone understands this, but the problem I can see with things moved on to European and so on, people are not so careful about the identifiers. So what's happening here is that when we moved this amount over through those banks over to the next one, we had a traceability, which I think we need to have, and also the possibility to communicate with each other. And for one example, we did a software upgrade and did an error. And what happened was that Bank of America called 11 in the morning, which means it was 4 o'clock or something like that in the States. And they said, we don't receive your $100,000. Fix it. We will open at 1 o'clock and then we need to have it. And we did a software rollback and so on, and everything was tracked. And I think this is the direction we need to move if we should do good linked data. It's like moving money. You must need who should receive your money, the identifier for that person's account. You need to have the identifier for the currency and so on. And in Sweden, I don't see this caring about metadata, but maybe LD4 is the new thing. So if you can succeed telling someone that the cache is moved to the correct place, you have something called semantic interoperability, that this system A can communicate with the system B, so they understand each other. And that's what we need to do now with linked data. So in 2012, I was old. I thought I was 50 years old. I stopped working at with banking. I started doing genealogy using something called WikiTree. And 2-3 years later, I first met Wikidata and started creating a property in WikiTree, in Wikidata for WikiTree. Today, another person has added 200,000 same as. So the genealogy world is even more crazy than Wikidata. People just upload and the quality could be excellent, but that's maybe 5-10%. And a lot of things are rubbish. But what one person has done, who has uploaded those 200,000, he has created rules in his software and check every week 22 million profiles between a lot of different external sources, and one is Wikidata. And also he check if that the person is born before and after. So having this connection with Wikidata is excellent, but it's also a way to get clues back that we have maybe a problem, or maybe this is an opportunity. And what we are looking into now, this is the way a weekly report is. So this is just the Wikidata rules. Clue for father, empty birthday. So here he has 10, 20 profiles where they don't have a birth date, but the birth date is available in Wikidata. And it's 8 new since last time, and so on. So the interesting thing here is that this community is doing a good work, excellent work. And you can get lists like this, or you can check for every profile and see what suggestions, problems they have. So that's also a part of this linked data, that we work together to get good quality. The problem here is that, as I said earlier, this is Wikipedia, an older version, and they are not so sophisticated with location, birth locations and so on. It's text string. And that's also the big challenge moving into linked data. And here is for an example where Rule 541 says Wikidata clue for father. So this is Bailey 31411 is the ID of the WikiTree person. This is the Wikidata person, or this possible father. So then people doing genealogy get this suggestion. They do a decision, tell it here. And now my hope is that we should move direction that Wikidata will reuse this. I will show you some tools later on. So what I've done in Wikidata, I have created about 15 properties. It takes ages to get them approved. Sometimes a person is against you, and then it will stop. And I've done 1 million edits. Most are manual, but the Europeana stuff was 200,000, which was done in 1 week or 2 weeks. The cool thing with the Europeana integration was, as I told you, that they already had the Wikidata queue number. So it was so easy doing that part. So I think in the beginning, linked data connecting other domains is a mess. You can use tools like OpenRefine, mix and match, and so on. But in the longer run, we will get much for free if we connect a lot. And Wikidata, I think, is an excellent example that it can work. So what I have done now is that I have written, maybe we can see here in this URL, my experience from connecting all those properties, that what we need to have, that we need to share the vision of properties, start discussing things, which you are doing in LD4, which I think is brilliant. And we need maybe agree that we don't agree also, because this is a moving target all the time. So we will never know what the future tells. Just a short remark about the next version of Wikidata, which I think is even more thrilling. The person who did this first version, it was in 2012. And after that, he left. I think he worked 1 year with Wikidata. He left to Google. And now he called Denny. And he has been working at Google until last year. And now he's back in Wikipedia. And the vision is that he should create a Wikipedia that scale much better, in a better way. So that means that today we have English Wikipedia, which is, I don't know, 40 million articles. But if you go to Swedish, or you go to Finland, or you go to some smaller countries, you don't have so many articles because you have to rewrite the articles. So what he will do is that he take Wikidata and will expand it so we get much more information in it. He are creating a new layer called wiki functions. And those functions should create articles. So this, I think, will be an even bigger step than the first version of Wikidata. He is normally taking example from Marie Curie, the female scientist. And he take example that he would like to see that, how do you describe in Wikidata that she is the only one who has got 2 Nobel Prizes? It's not so easy to do. So that means that we need to speak even more. He also tell us that when she got married, she had a blue dress, and that's the same dress she worked in the laboratory with. How do you do that in Wikidata? She was also visiting some symposium and was not allowed to speak as she was female. So her husband has to speak. How do you describe that in Wikidata? So what he's trying to do, because it's him, I think he will success because he's brilliant, I think. But it's a big step we are seeing in front of us. And this line here, I think, is important. I see Wikidata as a social experiment. When I worked on a bank, I was the Scrum Master. We had every morning, we have stand-up meetings. You explain, this I would like to do, this is my problem, and so on. In Wikidata, you never know who's on the other side. We have one sad experience, I think, last year was that the Scottish Wikipedia was, they realized that it was written mostly by a young person who didn't understand Scottish. But he has been doing this for 6 years. So it's funny, but also a tragedy. And that means that we can't trust people in Wikidata are eager. They do a lot of good. Some people try to do good, but maybe it's not excellent. So we should not see it as a social experiment and try to communicate with Wikidata is my advice. But you can't agree with everyone, is the experience I have had now 4 years into this. So what I have written down is what we need to have. We need to have help desk, a unique help desk ID, so we can track what's happening at both ends. And Wikidata is excellent where you have this ping function and you can add things. And we also have a different help desk possibilities. It's also important that we explain for each other that we will do this or we will not do this, so you can prioritize your own work. And this possibility to communicate, which we have in Wikidata, but it's good if we have it also in other platforms. So you can ping each other, you can subscribe on the changes, and you have this magic version management. So you can compare what's happening since last change. So my feedback is care about the data, use persistent identifier, and we need a lot more I think we have just started this trip with linked data, describing what is in the picture. And for example, this Europeana project, they had really good lectures about AI and machine learning, but then they have used people from Barcelona because they didn't have the skills, is my understanding. And those people who are used doing machine learning, they get sad because the quality of the metadata is not good enough and not and also too little, because it's normally text string in a local language. So care about metadata. Another maybe everyone knows this because I didn't realize that everyone was so advanced, but don't speak RDF too much. I have seen that in Sweden, that people are speaking RDF with normal users and they don't understand what they speak about and so on. So the best practice I have is down here in this document. And care about metadata is my, but maybe it's everyone, for everyone it's obvious. So maybe I stop here if that's okay.
Thank you so much. That was incredibly interesting.
So, sorry,
go ahead if you want to keep going.
Yeah, I'll take 2 slides more. And everyone who are advanced or want to connect with Wikidata, have a look on this mismatch finder tool. It's something created today, and I think the requirements are not set yet. And when I listen to the dialogue here on LD4, I'm so impressed what you think about if it should be gender in that way or so on. So I think your input to the Wikidata people as early as possible in the process is so important, because I'm not 100% sure if they understand the complexity that you speak about. So this Masley is the person, I can put it in the notes, is the person to contact. And I spoke to Lydia, who is the product owner of Wikidata, and they would like to have a lot of people testing the tools. And I think it's very important. And the good thing then is that the tools will be available so everyone can see the changes. And we don't need that every system is optimized for communication and so on. So I think this is a good way, but I'm not 100% sure if they do it advanced enough. Oh, no, I'm ready. Sorry.
You're fine. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. We are now going to turn it over to Eero to give our second presentation. Just a reminder to everybody that as you have questions, go ahead and put them either in the chat or in the Q&A. So Eero, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I come from Finland, University of Helsinki and Aalto University, and my background is in artificial intelligence, but 20 years ago I got excited about the semantic web when the really interesting things started to happen after the seminal paper by Tim Berners-Lee and others in Scientific American. And we started organizing different things in Finland. We organized a semantic web kickoff meeting 2001, and it was we got over 200 people there, and then we realized that this is something that people are really excited, and we established the semantic computing research group and started to work on different kind of applications and infrastructure components for the Finnish semantic web based on the international things, because I think that the W3C, they have very nice framework generally for the web, but when you try to apply this kind of technology in particular countries, you need to take into account your own language, the concepts that are used and vocabularies that have been used in museums and other places in the country. So there's lots of domain-specific work to be done in addition to the domain ignorant standards like RDF and SPARQL and so on being standardized internationally. So my presentation is actually a video that consists of another video. So there will be lots of videos here, and I think that I play the video first, and then I will show a website where you can see even more videos about the Sampo portals that we have been creating. So this presentation gives you a kind of overview for a work that have lasted over 20 years and produced quite a few different practical applications that are applications in use in Finland. So this is not only academic research, although we have written hundreds of papers of these systems in academic venues, but we have always tried to create something useful that people can really enjoy and use in their work. So I start the video.
I am Eero Hyvönen from the Helsinki Center for Digital Humanities, Heldig, University of Helsinki and Aalto University. This short presentation overviews our work on building a national linked open data infrastructure and applications for digital humanities. I will start with a short video on semantic web and artificial intelligence for digital humanities. After that, National Linked Open Data Infrastructure in Finland is presented and its applications, especially the Sampo systems. This work illustrates a paradigm shift in 20 years in web publishing, from content publishing to serendipitous knowledge discovery and AI. In this presentation, I focus on digital humanities. Digital humanities is a research area in the intersection of computer science, humanities, and social sciences. In our work, we develop and use computational methods for publishing and using and analyzing contents from humanities and social sciences, such as cultural heritage contents.
Science is vast, and so is the concept of AI. Though based on mathematical thinking, AI also has a lot to offer to social sciences through multidisciplinary approaches. For example, gathering of information. Very often, search engines give irrelevant or uninteresting results, or they can be out of context. The computer cannot comprehend what particular documents on the web are about. To provide more intelligent access for information, scientists have created the Semantic Web, where contents on the web are made comprehensible to the computer.
Another major benefit of the semantic web is that it can aggregate data from different data sources, even across language barriers. So we can get more data into the systems and in an interoperable way, so that people can be served with not only more intelligently the data, but also more data.
A worldwide pioneering semantic web concept has been developed in cooperation with the University of Helsinki and the Aalto University. It is a series of 12 semantic portals, each dedicated to a certain context. For example, the BiographySampo is a collection of over 13,000 biographies held by the Finnish Literature Society. These were transformed into a linked data service and enriched by linking it to the data of 16 external sources, such as Wikipedia, libraries, museums, and other archive collections. If you click on a particular biographical subject, you get a lot of interlinked, rich content about them. You can compare their lifeline on an interactive map, or you can select different life events from a list composed from different biography sources.
We have integrated the search and exploration systems with data analytic tools. So you not only get the possibility of search and explore the data, but also do data analysis and find interesting patterns of knowledge in the data.
For example, you can compare the places of birth and death of generals and clergymen in Finland in the 19th century and find out that generals moved a lot more than the clergy, who tended to remain in one place.
We're using artificial intelligence for solving problems. So not only do we provide the user with the tools for solving the problems, but we can provide him with artificial intelligence that can solve the problems by itself.
The elements needed for a linked open data infrastructure for digital humanities are illustrated in this image. Firstly, we need ontologies and ontology services. And in Finland, we have developed this onki.fi and finto.fi services for that purpose. We also need linked data services for datasets, and we are using the Linked Data Finland platform, ldf.fi. Also, the applications like the Sampo series to be discussed constitute one part of the infrastructure. The work is based on a web standard and best practices of W3C, data models provided by different standardization groups such as Dublin Core and SciDoc CRM, and software tools such as Fuseki, Sampo UI, and so on. We chose to use linked open data as the technical basis for our work. There are several reasons for this. By using linked data, everybody's data can be collaboratively enriched by each other's data instead of publishing data in separate data silos. Everybody wins by collaboration. By using linked data, it's possible to create findable, accessible, interoperable and reusable data using the FAIR principles. This means that the value of the data increases. Finally, creating more intelligent applications for the public, curators and researchers is possible. When the machine understands the data, it's possible and more cost efficient to create intelligent applications. During the last 17 years, we have published quite a few Sampos, semantic portals and data services on the web. They represent a wide variety of different application domains. For example, MuseumFinland and CultureSampo are about museum collections and Finnish culture, BookSampo about fiction literature, WarSampo and WarWictimSampo about war history. There are lots of systems dealing with biographical information like BiographySampo, US Congress Prosopographer, and mapping manuscript migrations about manuscripts. FindSampo is about archaeological finds, LetterSampo about epistolary data, LawSampo about legislation, and ParliamentSampo about parliamentary speeches and networks of politicians. The Sampo comes from the Finnish epic Kalevala, where Sampo is a mythical artifact that gives its owner riches and good fortune. It's a metaphor of amazing ancient technology. During this work, a set of principles have evolved, and we call them the Sampo model. I will next go through the 6 principles of the Sampo model. The first principle is to support collaborative data creation and publishing. This image illustrates the Sampo model. The Sampo is the red circle. Outside of it, we have data providers such as museums, media, libraries, citizens, linked data sources, archives, and so on. In the middle, we have an ontology infrastructure that is used for creating the data in an interoperable way. When a library, for example, publishes a piece of information within the circle, the ontology infrastructure is used, and so the piece of information is automatically linked to other pieces of information provided by other information sources. So the idea is that your data is enriched by other organizations' data if you publish your data in the Sampo, and in the same way, other people's data gets enriched automatically from your data. So this is a model where everybody can win. As could be seen in the previous slide, principle 2 of using a shared open ontology infrastructure is a central element in the Sampo model. The most important elements of a national ontology infrastructure for digital humanities are various domain ontologies, shared metadata models, and ontology and linked data services online. Albert Einstein has said, "Intellectuals solve problems, but geniuses prevent them." This wisdom applies very well to infrastructure building. Principle 3 states that systems should not only support data search and exploration, but also data analysis and knowledge discovery. In this screenshot from LetterSampo, network analysis of early modern correspondences have been made. In this case, the correspondences of René Descartes. From the image, one can see what correspondences he made with, for example, Konstantin Huygens, Marin Mersenne, and other researchers. This image illustrates correlation matrix of vocational groups between parents and children in the BiographySampo data. The graphic has been created by using Google Colab. It tells, for example, that children of politicians are often politicians too. Principle 4, provide multiple perspectives to the same data, brings in the idea that you can use or reuse the same data in different applications without touching the data, which is typically expensive. In Sampo systems, The different application perspectives are provided on the landing page of the semantic portal. In this screenshot, you can see WarSampo, Finnish World War II on the semantic web with 9 perspectives to war history that include wartime events, persons, army units, places, magazine articles, casualties of war, photographs, war cemeteries, and prisoners of war. Sampo portals also try to standardize portal usage by a simple filter analyze 2-step cycle. This screenshot taken from the mapping manuscript migrations on medieval and Renaissance manuscripts illustrates the idea. On the left-hand side, you have a faceted search filters by which you can easily restrict the result set to what you like by making selections on the facets. In this case, you can see facets, for example, on the production place of the manuscripts and production time. After you have filtered the results, you can see them on the right by default as a result table like in Google search. However, on the upper layer, you can see different perspective tabs, and by selecting different tab, you can view the same result set in different ways using different kind of data analytic tools. For example, you can see the manuscripts on maps or their migrations and so on. For example, in this screenshot of the mapping manuscript migrations, the user has selected manuscripts owned by Thomas Phillips and then views how they have migrated from place of manufacturing to last known location, indicated by the red part of the arrow. The 6th principle suggests that it's wise to make a clear distinction between the linked open data service and the user interface. This image illustrates the idea. On the server side below, we have a linked Data Finland service, and above that, the client-side applications. Only SPARQL is used for accessing the data. The applications include semantic portals and systems like Google Colab, Jupyter, Notebooks, Yaskui, and so on. The Sampo model and portals aim at making a paradigm change in publishing and using cultural heritage content on the web. The contents are published as linked data and also integrated seamlessly with intelligent tools for data analysis. In our vision, artificial intelligence should help the user in solving research problems and also in finding new ones using creative AI methods. In my mind, reusable shared linked open data infrastructure is the key for successful semantic web applications. But the lunch is not free. More collaboration is needed between organizations, and this of course complicates work. Integration of semantic portals and data services with legacy systems is a challenge in many places. Manual annotations are costly and may not scale up, but on the other hand, if we are using automatic annotation and linking, this lowers data quality. In general, using systems like Sampo's, one needs much more source criticism and data literacy. What the data actually is and means is not always clear. Big data quality issues arise also, like completeness of data, skewness of data, and different errors made in the data transformation processes. More information, publications, and links to different samples and infrastructure services can be found on the home pages of the Semantic Computing Research Group.
Okay, so this concludes my video, but if you're interested in these systems and how they actually work and what they have eaten, so to say, I put on the chat address to our webpage where we have collected information about the Sampo portals and lots of videos about them. So So, and you have here a list of the different systems that are now have been online. And so you can find the portal here from this URL if you want to try it live. Here's a year of publication. So we are now actually working on quite a few new samples here. Find Sampo, for example, and AcademySampo, where AcademySampo, for example, includes information about every academic education or people who have had academic education in Finland and from 1640 to 1899. And there are lots of new samples coming, like LawSampo, where we publish the Finnish legislation as linked data with the Ministry of Justice. LetterSampo, which includes even hundreds of thousands of early modern letters from the Republic of Letters, data from different sources in Europe. And ParliamentSampo, where we have now the first time published as linked data, the Finnish parliamentary discussions from 1907. So it's nearly million different speeches that the politicians have made in the Parliament of Finland. And we're working also on other stuff. And the system has also been used by other people, like in Norway, they have made a kind of copy of NameSampo. NameSampo is a system that you can find here. It's a system which includes over 2 million historical Finnish place names on maps that have been collected by the public during tens of years of sort of wiki kind of effort before the Wikipedia, and it also contains the official name registry of Finland, 800,000 names and places, and also it's also related or linked to Getty, so you can actually compare how the Finnish place names are represented in Getty TGN vocabulary. So you can go there and have a closer look at the real thing, or you can also have some more information about the samples, like the size of the knowledge graph. All this sample data is basically in the Linked Data Finland platform that we created for publishing linked data sets, and you can use, they're openly available. You can use them through SPARQL and also other linked data interfaces that people use, the best practices of using linked data, like content negotiation and things like that are supported for all these things. And there's also some information about the implementation, what kind of system we have used. We have used several and created several kind of tools, but now we are using Sampo UI, which is an open source software that we have found very useful. It's React-based system, and it really makes it easy now to produce these new samples. And this is one reason that we can produce so many samples in such a short time in Finland, because we have the tools and the infrastructure are now up and running, and we don't have to reinvent the wheel every time that we make a different application. We just take the old infrastructure and extend it a little bit, and then use the tools for creating the linked data publishing at the linked data platform, and then use Sampo UI for the user interface. So there's lots you can, if you want to have a look at the videos, there are lots of different videos that we have been making about these systems. Perhaps if you're interested in WarSampo, this Sampo is the second most popular in Finland. It has had over 700,000 users about the war history in Finland, the Second World War. And this video might be interesting if you want to see. It's a little bit old, but because the system has been extended, but it gives you an idea of how it looks. The most popular Sampo is BookSampo, which has had last year 2 million users. And the reason for that is that the Finnish public libraries, who were funding the project and collaborating with us, they took it and they are now maintaining the system as a kind of public service, one of their major portals for public libraries in Finland. Okay, I guess this concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Great, thanks, Eero. Really appreciate it. I will say, just having watched these two presentations, that this was unintentional, but I think really interesting pairing of talks that we've achieved here, in that we have like end-to-end, the data creators and the data consumers. So I'd encourage everyone, if you have questions, to put them in the Q&A or in the chat. And while we're waiting for people to put questions in, I have one of my own, actually, that I'd be interested in hearing from you both on, of what you think the role of libraries and archives is in this whole ecosystem we've been talking about. There's been some criticism of libraries in that we only publish data, or publishing it in the wrong places, or things like that. And I'm just wondering where you think libraries and archives should place ourselves within these ecosystems.
Well, I think libraries have a central role. Libraries used to publish books, and books are about data and knowledge. And I think the paradigm shift that I was referring to in my presentation is really happening in libraries. That instead of publishing printed books, you have to, and you have started already in libraries, publish data and different kind of data services, and then you are moving along to AI-based systems. So I think this is happening now, and in Finland, the National Library has been most active partner in many of our projects, and they are actually maintaining, for example, now the Finnish ontology service that we created in 10 years project, and it's a free open service in Finland, everybody to use, and for example, different libraries and museums and cultural organizations, they connect their legacy systems now to these ontology services, so that they can get the IDs that Magnus mentioned in Wikidata automatically when they catalog their systems, and so they are creating from the outset already data that is interoperable in the ontology sense. So I think libraries are very important, and also one thing still mentioned. My impression, at least in Finland, has been that also libraries have much better infrastructure and also IT departments that for example, museums and archives even. So they have the people as well. And for example, in the National Library of Finland, there are now a very, very good team who is creating these systems by themselves. So they also have a kind of advantage, because they started to have this kind of IT systems for books and book collections very early on, earlier than the other cultural organizations.
I can say my experience then. In 2017, I heard that the Swedish library called Libris had a new system for linked data. They started to develop it in 2011. And I put a link to the evaluation they have done themselves, and they see no benefits from linked data. And my feeling is that they have the wrong team. They are not interested in speaking. I met the people from the Finnish library, and they are much more delivering and so on. So I think it's a mental mindset you need to have. You need to meet other people and speak with them. And when I see what the Swedish library has produced, it's crazy. It's text strings, too many text strings, not linked data. And so it's not a free lunch. Can you say so? So you need to put the correct people in there. You have to have the correct mindset, and it's not easy. I think in Wikidata we can see that the people doing the best add most to Wikidata are really skilled people. It's they have a PhD in applied physics. That's what you begin with. So it's not a free lunch. but what makes me sad is that why couldn't library people be more active? Because you have the skills of doing cataloging. But in Sweden, we haven't seen that. That's sad.
Okay. Yeah. Well, one thing that we have found very sort of good in our work in getting funding for all this work. We have had over 50 funding organizations in our projects. Is that you shouldn't only focus on data, but you should demonstrate and make the small systems and bigger systems then later on the whole pipeline from data to some applications. So if you just focus as many libraries, probably the in Sweden the national library focused on only creating the data dump of their data, and probably didn't have any applications to show why this is really useful. Then things won't go. You must have the whole line of applications there.
If I should be a little bit naughty, they have produced text strings inside RDF and add no value. So that's a sad thing.
Fair enough. I have seen that much myself. So we have a question in the Q&A. I'm curious about the connection between the semantic web and artificial intelligence, AI. Besides search and discovery, are there other types of AI applications you see for cultural heritage linked data?
Well, of course, one part is related to creating the data. So artificial intelligence can be used in many ways for creating the data from for example from texts. So for example, in our BiographySampo, what we basically have is written biographies, over 10,000 biographies, and then you start extracting information from there. What happened to these people? What kind of events they experienced in their lives? What kind of family relations they had to other people there? So all this stuff, we are using AI for creating the knowledge graphs, and then the other way of using AI then is to use AI for analyzing the data. So for example, in a BiographySampo, the same system, we're using a kind of AI for of course enriching the data, like that. You know that if Helsinki is in Europe, then if something is in Helsinki, you know that it's in Europe. So the basic reasoning that the linked data standards allow and ontologies like ours allow you. But then you can also start making new kind of applications. Like we have a system where you can ask how are Finnish artists related to Italy. So this kind of very generic questions, and then the system can automatically sort out and try to find and not only find out the connections, but also trying to explain why certain person is related to, let's say, Pisa or Rome or so on. For example, that he painted a picture that depicts something that is situated in Pisa, like the Tower of Pisa.
Yeah, I find the link between, you mentioned knowledge and knowledge producing and those sorts of things of where the line between data and knowledge is when we're talking linked data, and which one linked data is. So Alexandra, I'm going to go ahead and identify you because it's a question where she's talking about a project she did at her home institution. So for Magnus, you mentioned that the Rune catalog publisher is not interested in linked data. And she mentions that she did a project that involved transforming a similar catalog, so Florentine drawings, to linked data using scans of the book. Would one solution be for someone else to take the scans text and build upon it? I guess I'm wondering where the line is between an organization or institution providing their collections as data and others building on top of that data.
To be clear, we had this authority of Runestones in Sweden. They are interested in linked data, but they are not so active. It's like, I can't, my English is too bad to say, syrup or something like that. You speak with them and then it takes 3 weeks or a year, and then you get a reaction. And then we have these people scanning the books. we have now, what I have done now for Runestones is that I have helped them so they can put it on the map and so on. So yes, I have helped, and you can build things using it. The challenge with the literature bank, all those literature, is that it's easier to take Runestones. That's the reason I took Runestone, because it's something you can touch. If you have more romance books that are more what literature for reading, then it's difficult to describe it with linked data. Is my feeling, and I hope we are moving into that direction. And when I listen to the people at the LD4, I think maybe we can do that. But I think it's a long journey, and one thing which is interesting regarding this with machine learning is that Europeana is doing a project now with art, and they try to find out more about the art. And the problem is that the metadata they have is bad, but another problem could be, how do we describe art in a way that it makes sense to do machine learning on it? So it's, maybe we don't have the language yet. So I think we have a lot of challenges in front of us. I don't know if I answered the question now, but.
Yes, I think so. So again, anybody who has any questions, please put them in the chat. But I'll also say this conversation to me is incredibly interesting because some of the things that are coming up, I've heard data literacy, that one of our primary problems is getting the world to understand the importance of this, and also the sort of scalability of what we're talking about. But certainly in both the projects that both of you have shown, I think it shows how those, picking away at the problem, we end up with something that's really cool. It's just a matter of getting to that point and convincing, honestly, resource allocators that it is worth spending the time to do all this piecemeal work to finally get to these systems like we're seeing in Finland and with the Runestones, that we can actually, see where all of them are on a map, or be able to search across all of Finland's collections. So really exciting stuff.
Yeah, or this point that the linked data make it possible to present on different languages.
Right.
If Danny is succeeding with his next project of the Wikidata called Abstract Wikipedia, then it will scale to 200 languages. And if you could write it once and everyone can read it, that's magic. It will not be, it will be easy text, I guess, but it's magic that you can get free knowledge in an easy way. I don't know how he will fix it, but he fixed Wikidata, so. Yeah.
Have you considered making the rune books as linked data by using automatic means, like they're scanned and you could OCR them, or even if they're handwritten texts, it's nowadays even possible to get handwritten texts into text.
We have transcription in Swedish. We can get that from the Rune people, from the authority. Yeah. And I'm start learning machine learning now. I will have do some tests tomorrow at the university. So maybe the problem with Rune script is that it's not much text. Okay, on one stone, maybe I have 100 characters or something like that if you're lucky. So it's maybe easy. I don't know how much you get out of it.
Yeah, I find this area very exciting at the moment. The sort of combining natural language understanding and extraction with this system. So like we are reading, the machines are now reading the law books of Finland and the parliamentary discussions, for example, and trying to find out what these guys actually have been talking in history. And there are lots of books available that can be used for that. And in some cases it's easier, and in some cases it's not so easy. So depending on the case, but this is definitely an area where lots of things are happening at the moment, I think.
the cool thing with Sweden, maybe you don't think it as well, living in Finland, is that we haven't had war since 15 something. Maybe we had some problems between our countries, but we have the Swedish...
1809 was the last war, yes,
yeah.
when we lost to Russia.
Yeah, and 1530, I think, we have the first document scanned in OCR about the Swedish what was said in the Swedish government. So we have it all as text, which is a dream I have, that we could look through, find all the people, what they speak about and so on. And I think yesterday it was a good presentation how they used, I think it's called Scapy and another tool to analyze the text. So it's getting better and better, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions? I think we may not.
Yeah.
If not, I will say this has been a really interesting conversation, and I personally have been taking notes throughout and appreciate both of your perspectives on these issues. I think there's a lot to unpack here. So thank you both for a really interesting presentation. I would remind people on this call that this will be, if you want to go back and look at it again, or some of the links that have been shared here, this will be available on YouTube shortly to share. I would also encourage everybody, our keynote for LD4 for today is coming up at 2:30. That will be Lauren Klein from Georgia Tech. It's another digital humanities researcher. So if you enjoyed talking here about digital humanities, I'd encourage you to go over to that keynote. Thanks again to both Magnus and Eero. I've really enjoyed this afternoon, and I appreciate everybody attending. Thank you all.